The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. And in that studio, we have Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. But before that, we've got to show our picture of Big Boy from Cameron, New York. That's a great photo. Thank you for sending that in. Everybody, the world stopped for just a moment when Big Boy came to town. I happened to see it in the beautiful town of Irwin. But now we join Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Good morning.
Good morning, Frank.
How's everything going this morning?
Well, we're not in Albany. That's good.
And that's always good.
When we're not in Albany, less damage can be done.
Right, and we got to talk about the end of session. We talked with Joe Sempolinski, I think it was Tuesday that week while he was in Albany. And obviously a lot of things were in the air. Thursday was kind of the final day of the end of session, right?
Yeah, we finished. I'm sorry to the viewers. I'm saying a little. We finished it, I think it was on Friday night.
Was it? Okay.
It all Friday night. Yeah, it's all been a blur about 8 o'clock p.m.
Now,
give or take.
Here's why I want to ask, because we talked about the budget before, and we're going to talk about more about the end of session. Mm-hmm. It depends on what outlet you go to, but I'll quote the way that the New York Post quoted it. Kathy Hochul's office lied about the state budget cost, underestimating by $9 billion.
Yes, that announcement came out, I think, 24 to 48 hours ago.
Yeah.
When they passed the budget, they said it was a $268 billion budget. Then they came out, the financial plan said it was $277 billion, so $9 billion more than what everyone claimed and touted. That's $22 billion more than the enacted budget last year. And if you look at Governor Hochul's time frame in the office, that's nearly $100 billion more than when she started. I mean, so it's just, unfortunately, and I was asked by a reporter yesterday about it, I'm like, it's just more of the same.
Yeah.
It's unsustainable and uncontrolled spending, more increase in spending, more taxes, more debt, more out-year budget gaps. Now our 4-year budget gaps are like $32 billion.
Yeah.
And I don't understand. We do not have a revenue problem in the state. We have a spending problem in the state. And I think the one thing I continue to say over and over again, I think my colleagues thinks it's their money.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they forget it's the people's money. I mean, the small businesses, the families out there, your viewers who are listening, they're making tough decisions every day. They're not overspending. They're dealing with tight budgets, and they, given the fiscal strains, the affordability crisis we have going on, they're all making tough decisions to make ends meet. Right. But the state of New York, their answer to the affordability crisis is spend more of your money, or to give a rebate check that's not even going to maybe pay for a round of groceries. Not nearly enough to put a dent in the energy crisis and utility crisis that we're facing too.
Well, and it's not as if $9 billion is a rounding error. Yeah. I want to quote Assembly Minority Leader Ed Rod. He said, apparently Democrats had to pass the state budget so they could find out what was in it.
Yes.
Albany Democrats demand a blank check from New York taxpayers and signed it in the dark. Backwards budgeting might be the Democratic way, but it doesn't work for the families who are forced to pick up the tab.
Well, it's so true. And, Ed, Leader Ra, he has a legislation that he supported that would require, and every time I got up and debated the budget bills, well, first, we had 15 budget extenders before we got to a budget vote.
Yeah.
So every time I'm like,
we played every one of your clips.
Every time I say, where's the financial plan? Where's the details? And even the report said, you didn't know how much money we were spending. I go, yeah, we knew the approximate amount. We knew it was going to be around $268 billion. But before you start passing any budget bills, we should have a complete financial plan in front of us, what the total amount is. I mean, how much we're totally spending in total before we start voting on billions of dollars, like the education budget or the Medicaid budget. I mean, so yeah, it's mind-blowing to me, the hypocrisy. I mean, they just continue to just spend money that's not theirs.
And we're going to talk about the hypocrisy when it comes to some other issues too here in a little bit. But again, it's a lack of transparency. And I joked with Joe, everybody in the media wants to make it about the media, make it about themselves. But it's very frustrating when the budget gets passed and we don't know what's in it, just like you didn't.
Right.
All of a sudden it comes out and they say it passed. Well, then we have to start doing the research and the homework because everything was done behind closed doors.
I mean, it kind of goes through this. It's like a storyline with the Democrats. Remember Nancy Pelosi with the health care plan? We got to pass it to find out what's in it.
Exactly.
Same thing with this, the budget. We got to pass the budget to find out how much it is and what's in it. Same thing with the CLCPA, those types of things. I mean, it's just one thing after another, and it's not good for transparency. It's not good for New Yorkers. I mean, not just us,
right.
The legislature before voting on it, but the public should have time to view these documents.
I agree.
We have to do a message of necessity. We're supposed to have a 3-day constitutional requirement that a bill is in print, it's in sight for 3 days, then we vote on it. But they always go to the message of necessity. I mean, we were already 57 days late anyway. What's another couple days at that point to do it in the full interest of transparency to the public?
$277 billion, and it should it be noted that Governor Hochul's office refused to comment on why it was so much higher.
Right, and then I mean the other thing too is everyone says $277 billion. I like to say $250 billion.
Yeah,
more than $250 billion. And the CLCPA, which I know we'll talk about, is more than $250 billion. I mean, this is significant amounts of money. And I will say to the viewer and to you, when we were passing the extenders, I can't remember which one it was when we hit.
Right.
At that one point, the amount of just the amount we've spent in those extenders was more than the spending of 19 different states.
That is wild. So let's do it. When you're talking about $277 billion, $250 billion, there's got to be some good.
Well, yes.
There's a lot of bad though, and a lot of ugly.
Yes, and that's why I always kind of like to refer to. I know we joked over the years called the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yes, when you spend over $250 billion, there's going to be some good things. Mm-hmm. There's certainly going to be some bad things, and there's some ugly. I mean, I'll talk about the good first because I mean, and they should be talked about. I always get kind of be talked about being pessimistic, but there are good things.
Right.
First of all, the changes we made to the CLCPA, which is policy, and policy shouldn't be in the budget, but I'm not really a big proponent of that. I understand, quite frankly, I understand why Governor Hochul did it, especially on some of these issues, but especially the CLCPA. We needed to pump the brakes on that thing. Mm-hmm. Quite frankly, we need to slam the brakes and start over.
I agree.
I think we need to do a lot more, but the changes to the CLCPA, which I can get into in a little bit, changing the methodology from a 20-year to a 100-year methodology, delaying the time frames, as far as setting regulations, going from 60% emissions by 2040 instead of 70% by 2030.
Right.
Asking the DEC to have some input and control over looking at the Cap and Invest program, the feasibility of it, which I think is a good thing. Also looks at the affordability, the reliability, and feasibility. I just wish it was someone independent, and I wish NYSA would have more say in that. But to even acknowledge that in the language, I think is a positive thing. But the CLCP changes, of course, the EV school bus mandate, which how many times have we talked about on this program? Right. To delay that 5 years, I mean, I think we should delay it even more than that. I think we should even stop it before that. But now, instead of having to convert your entire fleets by 2035, you have to convert it by 2040. And that's still the state of New York. So why are we even having a match in the state of New York? Right. In the state of New York, just for the viewer's perspective, the state of New York is not written into law that they have to convert their whole fleet. Right. It's a goal. So they can have an out for feasibility. They have an out for affordability. They have a out if the utility network can't handle it. But our school districts do not have an out for affordability, feasibility, reliability. They don't, but the state of New York does. And that's the hypocrisy. I think the state of New York should do it first. And they don't have to start purchasing the school buses until 2032. So it's a little bit of a pause, a pumping of the brakes. I mean, I think we need to slam the brakes, but that's a positive thing. The other good thing I would say that's something that myself, Joe Sempolinski, Chris Friend, Tom O'Mara were advocating for many, many years is we had another increase in the CHIPS program, which brings direct funds right to local municipalities, towns, villages, cities, counties to pay for their help pay for their local roads, bridges, culverts.
You know what's ironic about that? We just got a message, Phil, that says, ask Phil about Route 415 and Painted Post. Is it going to revert to a dirt road? As a joke. But, I mean, because you fought hard. Yeah. You've always fought hard when it comes to CHIPS and funding for roads.
Yes, and 415 is being a sate road. That's state dollars. But, but our local communities. I mean, and the reason we always say CHIPS is important, it's an important priority. 87% of the roads in New York State are owned and maintained by our municipality. 52% of the 18,000 bridges are owned and maintained by our municipalities. So the funding increase is warranted, it's justified. We were asking, quite frankly, for $250 million. Mm-hmm. The reason being is because if you look at the federal highway construction cost index inflationary rate over the past 3 years, that cost has increased over 70% with fuel costs and everything else. So
what's $250 million if we're rounding up to $9 billion accidentally?
Exactly.
I mean, I hate to talk that way, but
you're so right though. In the context of a $250 billion budget, $250 million, which would go right to help the local property taxpayer to save those costs. I mean, it's not just a safety. Number one, it's a safety issue. I mean, how many of our kids are put on a school bus every morning that goes over a local road, bridge, or culvert? What if one of those were to collapse? We need to be proactive, not reactive. It's an economic development perspective. Tourism. I mean, we're in the home of the winery region of the state, of the world, quite frankly, in the world.
And then you've got even just like Corning and places like that. Yeah. It's been a boom this year.
It has. And then, it's great to have a nice interstate, but businesses in these places located in towns, villages, and cities. So how great is it if the interstate's great, but you get off into local roads are a mess? So that money was a necessary investment, in my opinion. It didn't do as much as my perspective. But $50 million on top of what we had last year is a step in the right direction. And it was put into the CHIPS base aid versus doing things like local touring roads, which only affects 88 municipalities, where CHIPS affects every single municipality. That's a positive thing. Another positive thing I would like to say is for our corrections officers. We finally passed the death gamble legislation, and for the viewer who understands what that is.
And I know, I thought of you as soon as I heard it, because you have been fighting for this tooth and nail for how long?
Many, many years, and our corrections officers, all of us, our legislative delegation, this is something that passed unanimously in both houses several years. It has been vetoed by two different governors. Governor Cuomo vetoed it, and Governor Hochul vetoed it twice. Fortunately, it passed this year in the budget. And how that works is a corrections officer, they can retire after 25 years of service if they're at a certain age. If they were to say they wanted to stay on and continue to work, which we need many corrections officers to stay on and work, because the Governor Hochul fired 2,000 of them during the work protests last year. There's a workforce shortage, so we need many of these individuals to stay on from a retention perspective. Yeah. If they were to stay on without the death gamble now, if they didn't have it, say they got to their 25 years, they would secure their pension. But if they were to die in service, not at the facility, just die, their loved one, their spouse, would only get 3 times their annual salary. They would not be entitled to receive that pension that they not only deserve but have earned. So now that brings back equity to that. So that's a very, very good positive thing that came out of this, that we pushed for, and we're happy to see it. I think the other positive things I would say is, we always like to see an increase in funding for our libraries. I mean, they're like the central hubs for many of our rural communities. And in school aid, the governor put a 1% base increase. Many of us have said it should be at least it was 2% last year, at least get back to that same level, because, I mean, I know enrollment dictates some of these numbers, but whether you have 30 kids in the classroom or 20 kids in the classroom, you're still paying for increased pension costs for the employees, which is another issue we can talk about. We're still paying for health insurance that continues to rise. You're still paying for staff in those rooms, heating those rooms, cooling those rooms. There's costs, fixed costs that are there, and we need to make sure, especially in our rural areas, because the formula gets changed, and it's a complicated educational formula. Sure. They made changes to deal with English as English language learners which benefit the city areas, but not for formula changes that are more important to our rural areas. So that 2% base was helpful. Those are some good things. And of course, the context of a $250 billion budget.
You would hope.
That's
you would
good,
hope
yes.
there's a couple good things.
Exactly.
Well, we'll talk about the bad and the ugly when we return. We got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Jack is on the road getting us some photos of Big Boy. He's in Sayre. There's our newest picture. We'll play more of those, or show more of those, on Monday's edition, because we've got the Assemblyman in the studio. Phil, how about this for a comment? Thank you, Phil, for all that you do. Isn't that nice?
It is nice. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I should turn on your mic
privilege.
when you say that. I should turn on your mic. Oh, by the way, I forgot to start with this. I got stickers. Don't let me forget. I'm going to give you some Frankly Speaking stickers. Nice. All right, you give it to your friends in Albany.
I can wear it in the parade when I walk in the parade.
There you go.
I'm your promoter.
Yeah, you are you're my producer too. You give me a lot of great interviews. All right, so we talked about the good in the budget. Which, again, when we say good, we're talking about $250 billion, so there should be some good. What are you looking at, the bad and the ugly? How do we think the bad?
The bad, I mean, I did talk a little bit about the bad when I talked about the spending level, the unsustainable spending, and taxes, debt, out-year budget gaps. I mean, we did talk about that. I mean, some of the bad stuff, I mean, one of the big things that stuck out at me is the immigration changes that were made as part of the budget. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you probably talked to the sheriff. I mean, some of these immigration changes, it's horrible. One of them are the 287 agreements that allows the cooperation between the local law enforcement and the federal officials. You know, some of these agreements have been in place for decades. Mm-hmm. So now this basically voids those agreements, and so now the sheriff, Allard can't have that agreement with the federal officials, which makes a big mistake. It's
a huge mistake for safety, for public safety, but also that was money that was coming in. I mean, just at the base level, it was money that was coming into the county.
Exactly, and the thing is that when I debated the sponsor who spoke more onto this issue, she goes, "We don't want tax dollars going." I go, "State tax dollars or local?" I goes, these are local tax dollars. That's what they want. They're in charge of those dollars. They know what's best to protect their citizens. Obviously, maybe the state of New York doesn't seem to know that, but let the locals deal with this issue. I mean, it definitely usurps local control, local protection,
Totally agree.
and violates that ability for our sheriff to keep us safe on these issues.
Do you? And I don't want to say it's a conspiracy theory. It's a theory that she went so forceful with that because Bruce Blakeman has done such a great job in Nassau County working with ICE.
Yeah, I think she wants to go. She wants to go. She knows she's lost that part of it. She knows she's lost the public safety argument. Because all you have to do is go bail reform, discovery reform. Now
raise the age. I mentioned that yesterday. Another 15-year-old kid kills a 41-year-old guy on the bus.
You might as well call that the Gang Recruitment Act of the New York State Legislature. It's terrible. There's no responsibility. So you have that. Then the immigration changes. With this would allow citizens to sue federal immigration officials. I mean, are you kidding me? Not allowing them to wear masks to protect themselves, and because I'm out there getting doxxed, and that cooperation. I mean,
and I have a problem with the mask because last year, remember, she talked about it, that she was doing it because at that point there's a lot of members of the Jewish community in New York City that were being harassed by people in masks.
Yes.
And she said, we're going to ban masks. I was all for that because when you see people calling out Jewish people on a subway train and saying, stand up so we know who you are, wearing a mask, it was terrifying.
Right.
And now instead of doing it the right way, she says, no, we're going to go after law enforcement.
Right, and it's terrible. And I think this is part of the other narrative. I mean, again, we talked about the local control. We talked about, the safety side of this. I mean, what kind of message does this send to our law enforcement officers who risk their lives every day when they go out into the community? I mean, when I talked to the sheriff about the 287 agreements, it's better, it's safer, because now we deal with them inside the correctional facility rather than dealing with them out in the streets. I mean, it's safer for everyone. But that's why you see those problems like in Minnesota, because they don't work and they don't have a cooperation. So they're, it's just terrible. But on top of it, on this issue, it just doubles down on our sanctuary city, sanctuary state policies. And what kind of messages does it send to our public? I mean, it basically tips the scales of justice, continues to tip the scales of justice with all these policies in favor of the criminal over public safety, over crime victims and their families, and certainly over law enforcement. And I do remind the viewers, I've said this on your show before, we had the perfect storm of basically failed immigration policies. And I said this on the floor during the debate to wrap it up. I mean, number one, we knew under President Biden there was no border security at all, open door. So we had individuals come across the border. This one particular individual came across the border, was checked, was basically not vetted, just released, go ahead. Where did they come? They came to New York because we're a sanctuary city. We're a magnet for illegal immigrants because of the benefits and everything else. They committed a crime because of our failed bail laws. They were released because we're a sanctuary city. They did not cooperate and contact local federal law enforcement to come get this individual. They just released them. Where that individual went down to Atlanta, Georgia, and murdered Laken Riley. Right. And there are stories like this all across our country, and they just want to continue to put their head in the ground and out of sight, out of mind, but it's not out of sight, out of mind to those families who lost loved ones. And it's sad, it's destructive, dangerous policy, and that's why it's part of, not only do we have an affordability crisis in the state of New York, we have a public safety crisis and a quality of life crisis. It's all created by these failed policies that Governor Hochul and the Democrats are advancing.
You even look at the Penn Station slasher there that happened the other day. He was out, he had done a very similar thing. I think they said back in 2022, but like before the ink was dry, he was back out on the street. Right. It's time and time again with bad.
But who do they want to prosecute? They want to prosecute someone, a good Samaritan who's saving lives. I know you remember the Daniel Pani. They prosecuted that guy. Yeah. And when he helped save other people from a disturbed person who was going to pose harm, this is a hero. A veteran hero, and they prosecute him. Are you kidding me?
Well, look at the Cooler Cop. I mean, we could go all day.
The Cooler Cop.
Cooler Cop, there's an example. The judge gave him, 6 to 9 years, where that same judge had given a man who killed a homeless person less time than the Cooler Cop.
Yeah, and I read another article, I don't know all the details of it, it was passed along to me. There's a trooper that just got sentenced to prison because he pulled someone over, asked for ID, they wouldn't give my ID, something happened, there was an incident, they sped off. I think they used pepper spray to try because of something was going on. Sped off. They tried to control them because they were uncontrolled, and they ran into each other. A child died, and he got sentenced. Are you kidding me? I know. But the other person got released. I mean, what is going on in our state?
And that's the problem. And I talk about this with the sheriff so often, that budget time and the end of session concerns the out of me, because what is the next attack on public safety? What is the next attack going to be on our law enforcement and, again, coddling criminals? And it seems like every budget session we get something.
It is always something, and it always tips the scales of justice in favor of the criminals, many violent criminals.
Exactly.
Versus the interests of our public safety versus the interests of crime victims and their families, and versus the interests of law enforcement. It's just wrong. I mean, our law enforcement are under attack on our streets and are under attack inside our correctional facilities. But yet my Democratic colleagues want to continue to ignore that issue. That's why, another bad part of it, I mean, the spin from there is there are no reforms to the HALT Act, which we have been calling for, which the Governor's Office of Employee Relations with the DOCS Commissioner agreed to with nice scope that we need to make these changes, but yet they don't implement it. The Governor puts other policies in her budget, but she didn't put this, so that the safety and well-being of our corrections officers must not be a priority, and that's unfortunate.
I know. We got to take a short break. When we come back, it's been a hot topic on this program for a while now, redistricting. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. In that studio, Assemblyman Phil Palmesano with his Frankly Speaking sticker. I got to take your name off the camera so we can. I'll see it. There he is. Frankly Speaking. We appreciate that, Phil. We'll give you some extras for all the parades coming up.
There we go. Perfect.
Right. We're talking about redistricting. This is so frustrating for about 10 different reasons. So let's kind of start right from the, and one quick, we had a comment from a viewer before we go to that. From Mark. In answer to Hochul's bill for law enforcement not to help ICE, Tom Homan says he is going to flood New York City with ICE. What's your thoughts on that, Phil?
We need to keep our citizens safe.
Exactly.
And that's what he's trying to do.
Yep. All right, let's talk about the redistricting. What we knew this was going to happen because they had to get it in at the end of the session, right? Because then they have to do a whole nother session before it can be voted on. So where is it at? What are you seeing on kind of the nitty gritty of it?
Well, it's interesting just to kind of give a quick background if I can, because there's a lot to this, a lot to unpack from this. But the Democratic colleagues are all saying they're doing this because of what's happening federally. They forget to recognize they're the ones who started this process back in 2021. After the voters approved an independent redistricting commission, in 2021 they tried to change the process before the independent redistricting commission even met because they didn't like what was set up back then, allowing for a 2/3 majority vote of the commission if it's a one-party control. They didn't like that. They didn't like things like that. So they wanted to change it right away. It came to the voters. The voters rejected it. The voters approved IR's independent redistricting in 14 overwhelmingly. In 2020, when they rejected their attempt to deal with redistricting, what did they do anyway? They rejected. They didn't follow the process. They were supposed to do 2 maps. They rejected that. Put in their own maps in 22. Our Judge Pat McAllister here in Steuben County rejected the maps. Basically said they were didn't follow the proper process, and they were unconstitutionally gerrymandered, so they threw out the maps in 2022 and went to the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals upheld it, and then a special master drew the maps for 2022. Then after 2022, in 2023, the Court of Appeals Chief Judge stepped down. Then they put more people on the court that they viewed were more favorable, and you can see that in the decisions that happened. They went back and sued again. And said, well, that the special master is only supposed to be a temporary, not a permanent. But given the fact that in 2012 we were on a special map for the master's congressional maps for 10 years, so but they said it was temporary. The Court of Appeals agreed with it, so they went back and created an independent redistricting commission again. They redrew the maps in 2024, and they won more seats from that. And then even in 2025, they tried to go back to court and redraw Nicole Malataxis lines. The court said no. Yeah. So now they passed the first passage of the constitutional amendment to basically tip all the scales of justice in their favor, let them have total control of the process, not needing a 2/3 vote. You only need a simple majority vote if it's a one-party control. They would just control the whole process in mid-year decade and allow for mid-year redistricting. And so if this happens, it will pass now. If it pass, which it will pass next year, then it will go to the voters in 2027 for an up or down vote. And I said at the end of the day, you always say we trust the voters. I go, so do I. I said, hopefully the voters reject this once and again. But that would allow.
What scares me is you say an up or down vote, but then we learned that that in Albany they get to decide how it's worded.
Yeah, that's mind blowing to me,
doesn't it?
Oh, and I debated this bill with the sponsor of the bill. How it works right now, Frank, for the viewer, when there's a constitutional amendment that comes before the voters, the bipartisan Board of Elections Republican, Democrat, have to talk and work out the language. There's probably negotiations, probably discussion, probably
Makes
one
sense.
wants one way, the other one, but they have to agree on the language and put it before the voters. Now, based on the legislation we passed this week, same week, I referred to it as We Know Best Week, or political power grab week.
Yeah.
In Albany. We did all this in this week. And if they wanted to put on the ballot the Restore Democracy and Protection Act,
Yeah.
they could put that on the ballot. Now, who's not going to vote for something like that? But then you read the details of what it is, and it's nothing like that.
And because we've seen it before happen in the past, where there'll have to be people that basically put out signs that say no actually means yes.
Yes.
Or yes actually means no.
Yeah.
You can see already because they know this isn't popular among voters.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to word it in a way that dupes the common person to go out and say, well, yeah, of course I support, like you said, democracy.
And I think, we saw in 2020, there's a bunch of ballot initiatives, the redistricting, the allow for no excuse absentee voting. The voters rejected all that, but they came back and tinkered with it. They changed, instead of no excuse absentee voted, they did mail-in voting. So they were constantly usurping what the voters want. And they keep saying we trust the voters. And I say the problems are the voters don't trust us, and who can blame them, because we constantly reject what they tell us they want. You see with redistricting, we see with these other policies, and it's terrible. And so this vote in 2028 will be the fourth set of maps since 2020. And it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's just terrible.
Listen to this line. Unfortunately, control of the crucial words and sentences of which voters rely to make the decision will shift from the bipartisan election board, as you mentioned, to the state's legislative chamber. Since the state, Senate, Assembly, and governor's office are all Democrat-controlled, the party's preferences will exclusively shape not just the text of the ballot question, but how they are summarized. Because a lot of times they have the summarization so you can better understand, because it's very legalese and kind of wonky. They get in voter guides and by news media and civic groups. So that reeks to high heaven.
It reeks to high heaven. And where are the so-called good government groups that were always supposedly be good government groups? They were silent. It's shameful on them.
I know. And speaking of redistricting, there's more to it. So there's even the judicial redistricting?
There's judicial redistricting also. So we have the congressional redistricting, which gets a lot of the attention, and rightfully so. But they also put in place a judicial redistricting. They tried this last year, and Governor Hochul, she didn't actually veto it. She pocket vetoed it by not taking any action. So they brought it back up again. And what they want to do is they want to create, like right now, our judicial districts for Steuben County goes from Monroe County, Ontario, Schuyler, Yates, all those counties, not Schuyler, but Yates, down Livingston, and Steuben. It's a big district. So now there's a balance. There's Republican judges, there's Democratic judges. Now what they want to do is they want to create separate districts. Erie County, its own district of judges.
Okay.
Monroe County, its own district of judges. And Onondaga County, its own district of judges, which have the cities, which are Democrat-based. So those are going to create basically more Democrat judges across the board. Everyone knows that, they realize it, and it makes no sense whatsoever. And I take that back to, remember when they passed any changes to constitutional amendments on, whether election law, they have to go to one of four courts, anything constitutional. Erie County, now they'll have all Democratic judges. Albany County.
Right. I'm trying to think where they...
Well, I think Westchester and New York City.
Yeah.
So Democratic bastions. So why would they something like this not have? So this is going to basically create more Democratic judges, and it's problematic from my perspective. It's just, again, we know best, and they just want to have more Democrat judges, and that's the whole purpose of it. Now you might have more Republican judges in some of these other areas that are consolidated, but if you have to go to court in some of these bigger areas, if you have to go to court in Erie County where you could get a Republican judge, you won't get a Republican judge anymore, and it's problematic. So that's the other part of the redistricting happened. And the other thing we did, I don't know if you talked about it too, is the other piece of legislation we passed that last week is even year elections again. I know we did it for town municipal judge class.
It's a mess.
Now what they did is they're changing the Constitution, because this didn't affect sheriffs, DAs, county clerks, because constitutionally they had their specific period of time, which was in the odd years, most of them, some of them. And what happens now, this is going to lump all of them into this even year too. And this doesn't affect New York City.
No, and
they're doing all this
all of it
New York
doesn't
City.
affect New York City, and we've talked about it before. So if I'm on town council, you know that, and if I'm up for re-election and I have to compete with state senator, assemblyman, all these other people for attention, for ad buys, you couldn't do it. So the little guy gets the short end of the stick again.
The short end of the stick again. Being able to get an immediate buys is going to be a lot harder. But the other part about it is the ballot. What about ballot confusion? These are going to be like 2-page ballots instead of 1-page ballots. I mean, that's going to be a huge ballot. They say it's going to save on costs. It's not going to save on costs at all. No. I mean, you still have those other elections that need to go on. And the other thing is kind of scary. So
when do they care about save on cost, by the way?
Yeah. Since when do they care about spending your money?
Yeah.
But the other thing that's concerning me, and I said this on the floor, if you have an overlap and you have a vacancy, say a sheriff or a DA, right. The current law right now, if there was a vacancy, the governor would appoint that vacancy. If there was a death, if someone moved, something changed the job. But this is going to create much more of that just because of the sequence of how the terms end and everything else. So now the governor will have these appointments. And I said on the floor of the Assembly, I go, I can tell you for sure in the 5 counties I represent, Steuben, Yates, Schuyler, Chemung, Seneca, the people I represent do not want Governor Hochul, if she's the governor, picking the next sheriff, picking the next right. DA, picking the next county clerk. They just don't. And this is going to put more power. And when the governor appoints, you run into that next race as the incumbent, you have a little bit more of a head start than someone else. Yeah. So that's all part of the end game. But yet this doesn't include New York City. Yeah. And the interesting thing about it with the even year, they say they want more participation. When are all these ballot questions going to come to the voters? In 27.
Yeah.
When New York City can vote. And New York City can vote on this, but even though it doesn't affect them.
No, that's not.
So it's just mind-blowing to me, the hypocrisy, the arrogance. They continue to say we trust the voters, but the voters don't trust us. And that's why I kind of, my narrative was when I got up and spoke, welcome to We Know Best Week here in New York. Welcome to the political power grab of the week. And it's just terrible.
I don't want to belabor this, but you think about it in an election year, a big election year. Okay, I can have on you, I can have on the congressman, all that, because it's a really important time. When is the schedule going to get too crowded for, like this morning, I interviewed someone running for town justice, or I run for town council. They're going to get pushed aside and get absolutely no attention.
Oh, you're going to be running with the president.
Yeah, exactly.
You're going to be running with the governor.
Yeah.
I mean, there's going to be no room on a ballot. It's going to be a 2-page ballot. Yep. It's going to be confusing to the voters. And the thing about local government, I mean, I don't know if local government officials get as much credit as they deserve and should receive. You are at the base level, the grassroots level of politics. Mm-hmm. You are right there. You see your neighbor in the grocery store. Exactly. You see him on the street. You talk to them. They know where you live. They know how to call you home when they have questions. You do a tremendous job for our communities. And the fact that and our local governments didn't ask for this. No. They don't want this.
It's just confusing.
It's confusing, and they want that. They might say about people will vote. People will come out and vote if they want to vote. You can't maximize participation just because you want to do it one way or another. But let the voters, let the local governments control, but it's a constant usurping of local control. You see it in one thing we talked about with the immigration, taking over local control of our public safety, taking over local control of elections, taking over local control of siting windmills and solar panels. It's all about usurping local control because Albany thinks they know best, and they don't.
On that note, we got to take a short break. Stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. In that studio, Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. We have a couple comments from viewers. Phil, Ken writes in, please tell Phil that we are grateful that he is working hard to be a good steward of the taxpayers' money. But I have to take exemption to one thing he said. The Democrats in Albany don't think of taxpayer money as their own. They view it as someone else's money. I would bet that they do more due diligence with their own money, working to augment it and protect it, and certainly don't spend it foolishly. It's probably a good point.
That's a great point.
Yeah, coming from a different viewer. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. Tell Phil he is doing a fantastic job. You both have a wonderful weekend. Well, isn't that nice? And finally, time for the Tea Party to return and flood the zone in Albany and have our voices heard, whether it's letters or actually showing up to protest. We need to make these people uncomfortable and realize that people want to be heard. The one-party rule, it always goes back to one-party rule. All right, so we talked about, I think we covered everything with redistricting. We played this clip last week. I was hoping you could talk about it. And this is in reference to our good friend, he's been on the program numerous times, Joe Tobia. And I thought, first of all, great job on the floor with that speech. Could you tell us about the Rural Suicide Council Act, or whatever it's exactly entitled?
This is
Rural Suicide Prevention Council.
This legislation has been around for a number of years, but Joe Tobia brought it to our attention. Mm-hmm. And it would create a rural suicide council that basically, I mean, it recognizes the fact that we have a higher rates of suicide in our rural areas than we do in our urban areas. And Joe brought it to our attention because him and his wife, Elisa, lost their son, Matt, tragically to suicide. And they wanted to make a difference. They wanted to help other families, to try to avoid this tragedy. And when you talk to Joe and Elisa, Matt was looking for help, and they couldn't find help, and it's just wrong. I mean, the state basically failed him.
Oh, absolutely.
And so he found this legislation. So we found it. A colleague of mine had it in the Assembly, Republican. We took it to a Democratic sponsor, the chairwoman of mental health. She took it. It passed a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And then it got vetoed.
And wasn't the excuse, which is ironic because what we've been talking about all morning long, wasn't it too much cost, Governor Hochul said?
Governor cost, which is mind-blowing to me. Then she vetoes these in lump sums whenever there's councils. They said it should be done in the context of the budget. And it was just a no-nonsense veto, because what this would do is find best practices, identify sources, identify best practices, things to help address this issue moving forward. A comprehensive approach, and it would require meetings and put in place plans and strategies, and just a common sense approach. So when the governor vetoed it, what happened is the following year, Joe came up to Albany and testified before the Mental Health Budget Committee and talked about it passionately, and it got people's attention. Some things happened. The legislation didn't advance last year because of, I think there was changes in sponsorship because a new person came in. But then he made it again to push this year. And finally, it happened in the last couple of days of session. The Senate passed it, and we passed it. I took a picture of the board and let them know. And when I knew it was coming up for a vote, I just wanted to get up on the floor and just recognize Joe and Elisa.
That's great.
For their advocacy. I mean, and again, it's because they want to help other families. And now we're just hoping Governor Hochul signs the bill this time around, and I know he's going to continue that push. And I mean, I know that they're trying to do stuff within the department to address these issues, and right. Joe's a part of those discussions, which he should be, and I'm glad he is. I'm glad he is there. But we want to make it statutory to compel them to do these process, compel them to have these meetings, compel them to put forward these strategies, and I just think it's the right approach. So I just really, so much credit to Joe and Elisa.
All right, we got to take our last break. Get your last second comments in for the Assemblyman. We'll be right back. And home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. And in that studio this morning, we have Assemblyman Phil Palmesano. Phil, it's hard to believe, but we're wrapping up. We do have a comment from a viewer. The 51st state, upstate New York. Let's get it done. Thank you. You have to get one in there, right?
Absolutely.
All right. There's another big. So you had a couple big wins for issues that are really personal to you. And this one, tell us about Donate Life.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we did in the budget, we were asking for some additional funding too, because the governor cut some funding, which I don't understand.
Right.
But we got that funding restored to help more promotion with our Donate Life. But the other thing, one big piece of legislation that we were pushing, and I've always said, New Yorkers are good people. The more we can ask the question,
absolutely,
do you want to be an organ donor, the more we're going to say yes. We've had signature pieces of legislation like Lauren's Law, which when you do your license, 16, 17 years to register their intent to be an organ donor. The online donation registry, those are the big three. But the big one, another big one we passed, which I consider those are the four anchors, and this will be the anchor. We call it Doorways to Donation. This would allow people when they're filing their income taxes to be asked a question and say yes or no, do you want to be an organ donor? You don't have to say yes, but you have to answer the question.
Right.
If you want to get your taxes processed. That's the goal. Last year the governor vetoed it because of some objections from Tax and Finance. We believe we've overcome those objections. The governor should sign it if she wants to save lives.
Yeah.
So now when people get asked that question, that's important. And why is this important? Right now in New York, we have nearly 8,000 New Yorkers on the transplant wait list.
Right.
Nearly 800 have been waiting for more than 5 years. We have the third highest need for organs, but one of the worst donation rates in the entire country. The national average is 64%. New York is at 52%. We've made tremendous progress over the years, but we still have a long way to go. And I always say when I talk about this issue, we can and we must do better. But the most important, like I think we lost 300 New Yorkers, men, women, and children waiting for a life-saving organ transplant last year. But the most important statistic for people to know, one person who donates at the time of their death can save up to 8 lives and impact the lives of 75 others. Now, I understand when you talk about this issue, it's hard because you're talking about one's own death. Yeah. But then you just heard those statistics I gave you, and think about it for a minute. What if it was your mom or dad? Right. What if it was your brother or sister? What if it was your husband or wife, or God forbid, your son or daughter, and they were in need of a life-saving organ transplant, and you heard those numbers? Maybe, just maybe, you might think a little differently about the issue. Mm-hmm. I think maybe you will. So at a minimum, this should encourage people to have conversations with their family members about their interests. And at the end of the day, we can do this together and we can save lives. I mean, you can leave a legacy,
Yep, I agree. Phil, it's hard to believe we're out of time.
Yes.
I know. Can you believe I think we covered everything. Did we get everything?
I think we did. Thank you.
You got a busy week. You're going to be meeting with all these state champions. I like when you do this each year.
Yeah, that's definitely. This is a frustrating part to our job, but there's a lot of fun parts to our job. We were at Penn last. We're going to be at Corning and Watkins Glen in the near future, and some others.
That's great. Well, Phil Palmesano has been our guest. We also want to thank Randy Dye for being on the program. He's running for Corning Town Justice. I want to thank Congressman Nick Langworthy for answering our questions about the Anti-Fraud Act. I also want to thank Chris Severson for sending in the stickers, and also Jack for sending all those great pictures of Big Boy. We'll have to do this again, Phil, real soon. How about that?
Some Friday.
Yeah, some Friday. I told Sempolinski he's done with Fridays. Can't take Fridays anymore.
That's all right.
He's on next Thursday, though. See, he listened. All right, so join us next week for Frankly Speaking. Have a great weekend, everyone. Stay safe. We'll see you on Monday.